So we left off in the first part at a point where a chromatic descent in the bass had reached a back and forth between a German and a 1/6/4 chords in E flat minor. Everything leading on the way to a dominant in E flat, so a chord of B flat. And in that context, we get this next chord where the bass goes down to an A. The E flat stays the same, the G flat stays also written as an F sharp, and then in the upper voice we have a C. So this would be a chord of F sharp diminished seventh, but in the context of E flat, when we were pointing to a dominant, F sharp is not really part of that context. So I see the other way of reading this chord, one of the other ways, is as a chord of A diminished, the fully diminished chord of A, if we do take that F sharp to be a G flat. And if we read it as the chord of A fully diminished, then this is 7 of B flat, which is where we were looking. So we had the German and the 1/6/4, and now one more chord pointing to a dominant on B flat. So it's a 7/7 of 5 in our current key of E flat. And then that's followed by this chord, where we have basically all the same notes, except that the bass moved from an A to an A flat. And what do we have here with this chord? Well, there's these two notes, the A flat and the F sharp. Both of them point to the G. So the F sharp points upward to the G, the A flat points downward toward the G. And this is the same that we've seen several times, the augmented sixth interval pointing to one single note that would be the dominant of whatever key is being established. In this case, that G would be the dominant of C. So there's an emphasis to C through that augmented sixth chord, which, by the way, has the tonic in the third. It's a German chord, just as the ones we've seen before. And in fact, the chord is resolved with the A flat and the F sharp pointing out towards the G. So we do go to a chord with the bass on G, and we have C and E natural. So we're resolving to the chord of 1/6/4, although in this case it's major. So German usually points to a minor key, but in this case there's an instantaneous mode mixture, and Liszt resolved it to a major 1/6/4. So we need a new color. Let's do green for the C, and we have German and 1/6/4. Now, how far back could we take that reading in C? So the chord before the German chord. This was the chord that we read as 7 of 5 in E flat when it was A diminished. But if we read the F sharp as F sharp, then this becomes the chord of F sharp diminished, which is the 7 of G. So that's a power of the diminished chord. What was a chord rooted in A as an emphasis to B flat is also the same notes as a chord rooted in F sharp as an emphasis to G. And G is 5 in C, so we have a full progression in C. That's 7 of 5 going to a German chord going to 1/6/4. All those chords are pointing towards the dominant in C, which would be the chord of G major. I have a feeling we're not going to get that chord of G major, and in fact all those accidentals tell me that's not what we're getting. So what do we have next? Okay, so there's that F double sharp. That's in fact the same note as the G. So the G is staying as the F double sharp. And then we have C sharp, E natural, and an A sharp. This would be the chord of F double sharp diminished, right? So the F double sharp, A sharp, C sharp, E. So yeah, this is the fully diminished chord of F double sharp 7. And if the root of the chord is F double sharp, which is likely because otherwise it would not be written as an F sharp, F double sharp, then that is the emphasis to the note next to it, which would be G sharp. So this is 7 of G sharp. And in C, that doesn't seem to make much sense until we realize that G sharp is also A flat. And A flat is not exactly part of C major, but it is part of C minor. It is 6 in C minor. So this would be 7 of A flat, which is 7 of 6. That's what it is in C, so we can still use the green So this is 7 of 6, and let me emphasize that this is the flat 6. And what we have there is an emphasis to 6 after a dominant, which is what we had before also up here. So we had this dominant in G, this 5-2, followed not by the resolution but by the emphasis to the deceptive cadence, so an emphasis to 6. And this is what we're having down here in C. Even though in this case the dominant is not exactly dominant, it's not the express 5 chord, but the stand-in 1-6-4. But it's a similar move where the dominant or something standing for it is turned into the emphasis to the deceptive cadence. Will this emphasis resolve normally? Will we finally have a normal resolution in this piece? Well, I'm noticing something really cool and really interesting about the last line, the last system of the passage, which is that there's no single accidentals in the music itself. So there's the key signature, of course, with all those sharps, but in the music itself, there's no flats, no sharps, no natural signs, which is the opposite of what we've had to deal with so far, all those flats and sharps turning into each other and rereading of chords and all that. From this point on, and this is the point where the key signature changes, in fact, we will be entering a fully diatonic series of chords. So I do expect that emphasis to 6, the 7 of 6, to be resolved relatively normally. And in fact, I see the bass in G sharp, which is what we expect. On the other hand, I also see this second. So this is not a normal triad. There's this seconds there, that C sharp forming a second with the D. But that is a suspension. Those C sharps are going to resolve down to a B. Each of them, all of them are resolving down to a B. So the chord really has the G sharp in the bass and the B preceded or suspended by a C sharp and then a D sharp. All those sharps are not explicit there, but they are from the key signature. And that is the chord of G sharp, which is the chord of A flat, which is 6, the flat 6 in the key of C, where we were. So this is flat 6 in our green color, except that it's not a major chord. The 6 of a minor key, so the flat 6, is usually a major chord. So there's a new instantaneous mode mixture. That 7 of flat 6 does resolve to the flat 6, only that the flat 6 is turned into a minor chord right away. So Liszt is taking a couple of licenses with this whole transition to the diatonic passage. It's a deceptive cadence, it's mediated by the 7 of a 6, but it doesn't come from an explicit dominant chord, but from the stand-in 1-6-4 in major mode. And then it goes to the quote-unquote wrong 6, it goes to the flat 6 from the minor mode. And even when it resolves to the quote-unquote wrong quality of triad, so it's the minor flat 6. So it's certainly a licentious move, kind of crowning this whole very chromatic, very vagrant passage before settling in F sharp major, where everything that follows is diatonic. So what I'm going to do with the following chords is just fast forward through the analysis, so it's a matter of finding what the chord is and what degree it is in the key of F sharp major. We'll just go through that and see how the passage ends at the very end. So here we are. We had a very clear subdominant leading to a very clearly dominant sounding chord. But this dominant chord still hides one last detail. This is not the usual straightforward dominant chord, which would be the chord of C sharp major 7, but it doesn't have that G sharp, but instead has an A sharp. We saw this in Mozart's piece as well. This is an altered dominant where the 6th is substituted for the 5th of a chord of 5. So 5-7 with a substituted 6th. A fully diatonic chord, but still a special and especially luminous dominant that leads to that glorious resolution of the whole passage in the major triad of F sharp. That's the end of the passage, but I want to zoom back out to the big picture and see whatever happened with that chromatic descent that was going on. So at first we found a couple more chromatic chords, and then the piece settled into a fully diatonic section in F sharp. So the chromatic chords we found do continue the chromatic descent in the bass through A and A flat and all the way down to G that becomes the F double sharp. So in the final analysis, the chromatic descent is a full minor sixth, which is quite a record for this kind of harmonized chromatic descents in the bass. What happens when the piece turns diatonic? So the bass goes G sharp, A sharp, B, C sharp, so going consistently up through the diatonic scale. So it's kind of an answer to the chromatic descent that came before. This is a diatonic ascent. And then the C sharp resolves down to the F sharp, that very conclusive cadence into the new, very clear tonic. And wow, this is amazing. So that F sharp would have been the next step in the chromatic descent coming from the G. So yeah, this is actually the main finding of the analysis. The chromatic descent is actually from the E flat all the way down to the F sharp. Only that the very last step is singled out particularly with that insertion of a diatonic ascent. And in fact, F sharp is a very pivotal key in the sonata as a whole, since the sonata is in B, F sharp is the key of the dominant. So even though the passage, like the piece as a whole, and in fact like Liszt's music in general and late romantic music in general, so often hints at so many different keys that's often called tonal vagrancy. Even so, you can still see the special treatment for the pillars of tonality, like for example the key of a dominant, in this case the F sharp. And we saw that in this passage as well, in addition to a lot of really cool harmonic slave hand that was a lot of fun. So that's it for this passage, but I do look forward to analyzing more sections of this amazing piece. So until then, leave your comments, hit subscribe, all the rest, go listen to Liszt's sonata, and I'll see you next time.